and this is, I'm speaking for myself and my perspective. Last Sunday, I mentioned that I have had trouble convincing friends of mine, black friends of mine, to come to Sierra Madre. And about 60 people erupted in laughter. And it was like that wasn't a joke. And it still isn't funny, right? But it's a reality that we live in 2017, that the bubble that you may live in is not the same reality for someone like me. And I only live a half a mile. I'm your neighbor. I live right over in Pasadena. But it's a stretch to come here because of the history of the city. And so the fact that it is here, yeah, they need 2 cans of spinach. So, I mean, but let's go there. Let's go right into that. I mean, can a white man tell a black woman's story? That's really what we want to talk about.
Well, I'm half Korean, half white, raised in a foster home, and I've had such an incredibly diverse life. And then the stupidest thing, I listened to someone on Facebook. A black woman told me that I had no right and I had no idea what it was like to be a black person. And I've been pulled over by cops. I've been hassled. I've gotten a little bit of passes sometimes, you know, because I got the half-white side of me. But I wasn't able to stop crying during the whole second act because I feel both sides so intently. And I don't even know if I really made a question or not.
You spoke from your heart. I mean, you spoke,
Yeah.
that's the talk back, that's the conversation part of it, so.
That's just, so I mean, you know, Asians were slaves too, you know, it's like, and that's where I'm just very, any discrimination is wrong. And if anyone has been discriminated, even white people, maybe you're the nerd, maybe you're the fat kid, maybe you're the dumb jock. We've all been discriminated in some way, and we can all relate to each other. And yeah, okay, that's all.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening.
So did anybody find any conflict between? Oh, go ahead.
So I'm a writer, not a very successful best-selling writer, but during the Bush years, I got possessed to write a science fiction novel, and the main character was a black Muslim. And I wrote from a point of view of a black Muslim and a white woman and various characters. It was an amazing experience because I felt possessed when I wrote it. I shared this with some of my Muslim friends, and they gave me a lot of positive feedback. But I think it was important that I didn't pretend to be a Muslim. I am not a Muslim. I'm a white Quaker male. I didn't pretend to be someone else. But in writing fiction, we pretend, like you actors pretend, to be people that you're not. And we accept the integrity of that. We admire you for pretending to be someone you're not, because in a sense, you're being honest by your actors. But I think the problem morally in this story is someone pretending to be someone else in a way that really hurts someone else. Because there's a lack of integrity when a white writer pretends to be, you know, a black woman. I'm kind of rambling.
No.
That's the moral issue for me, is the lack of transparency about it.
Totally agree.
No.
So it's an ethical issue.
Well,
Yeah.
How do you guys feel, the black participants here, how do you guys feel about this? I mean, do you feel that there is no voice outside of the black community to speak the black experience as a personal experience?
Right.
Well,
So my comment to that, I'm going to try to address both your question and your comment, sir. So I feel like the play is, it offers a bigger question than is it a fraud, you know, is fraud wrong? Because basically he perpetrated a fraud and that was clearly the wrong thing to do. But I think the play offers an opportunity to talk about whether it's okay, even in the case that it wasn't a fraud, but is it okay for another race or culture, someone of another race or culture to tell someone else's story in a context where maybe people aren't able to tell their own stories? And that's a part of Shalita's argument, is that, you know, white people are telling our stories for us, and we don't even get to tell our stories. And then I think, so, you know, can they? Yes. Can they maybe even do it well? Perhaps. But I think there's a danger in making that assumption, because I mentioned this at one of the previous talkbacks. You know, when people make that assumption that they can tell other people's stories, they might get it wrong. So we had, you know, the birth of a nation. You know, that wasn't a fraud. We knew exactly who those people were. They weren't saying they were someone that they weren't. But they got the story wrong. All the black people who saw that movie were outraged. And so I think that's the danger when you decide to tell someone else's story and you're not of that culture and you don't take it back to them and, you know, kind of get their stamp of approval and give them co-authorship for their own experience, is that you might get it wrong, and, you know, that's hurtful. It has consequences for how people perceive that culture. So I feel like, even though it makes for interesting drama on stage, the fact that he perpetrated this fraud, I feel like we have an opportunity to talk about a bigger discussion, which is, you know, should people tell other people's stories if that people don't have their own opportunity to tell their own?
Brings us back to ethics.
I'm sorry, sir?
Brings us back to ethics.
Right.
Well,
And social responsibility, I feel like. Is there any, are we each other's keepers? You know, do we have any sense of responsibility to, you know, the people who don't get to tell their own stories? Or do we just sort of say, well, I have creative freedom and I wrote this masterpiece, so publish it and pay me?
Call it a fiction, not a memoir.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how to have this conversation at all, because my daughter's, I had a late baby, she's a freshman at Berkeley. She has her boyfriend is biracial, as small as black, his dad's white. She tells me I'm a racist because I was born in Iowa, and I'm 64, almost 64 years old, and I'm 64! I'm in Gilbertville, Iowa. And so as much as I lived in New York for 20 years, you know, I don't know, I feel like every time I open my mouth, I'm embarrassed to be white. You know, I'm a huge Hillary supporter. I love Christian. We've worked together a couple of times. I don't know how to even speak anymore. I don't know how to speak. I want everybody to be on stage together. I want everybody to work together. I want everybody to love everybody, and I want to march and march and march. But I don't know how to have this conversation, because at Nora's school, her high school, everybody was talking about how you have to have a black student union, you have to have a Hispanic student union, you have to have a white student union. And where you know, when I went to college from Gilbertville, all I wanted to do was meet everybody. I wanted everybody to be in the union together so I could learn about all these people. Because I was white, you know, I didn't want to be, you know what I mean? And so now I feel like we're going almost the opposite direction, because we're saying everybody needs to be secure in their space. So we need to have all the black kids here, we need to have all the white kids here, you know, and all that does is make people even less like, I think that, I don't know. Okay. Take it over from there. Help me. I'm embarrassed to be fucking white. I'm embarrassed to be white now because we have a racist president, and I march, but I'm still white, you know, and I, you know, it's really hard.
Wow.
To know what to do. To know what to do. To know how to talk.
Well, first of all, you're honest.
Right.
That's the first thing. A lot of people aren't honest. I can't speak for everybody here, but it was very important to me not to have a black-white play. I really wanted someone from another ethnicity. And actually, I have a few mixtures of ethnicities up here. So one of the characters was supposed to be white. And I said to Christian, can we see Middle Eastern people, Latinos, Indians, Native Americans? And I had this array, we had an array of beautiful, wonderful actresses that walked in. And it was really hard. And then this ding dong.
You were wonderful, go. You're absolutely brilliant. I'm a friend of Lila's. You're absolutely fucking.
We're not doing that play here.
Sorry.
This ding dong, where is she? Walked in, she was the last one to audition, and Christian and I just went, yeah, she came from totally the left field. The character was supposed to be a mentor, and instead we made her a Generation X, you know, from Spanish Harlem or whatever, you know, who went to school with Shalita, and to me that was like, I feel like it was I felt like Christopher Columbus discovering America, you know. But to speak to your question, and please, folks, chime in. I went to basically all white schools my whole life. I went to Catholic school. My last name's McLean. I was one of the first black people to march in the, what is it, St. Patrick's Day Parade. What can I tell you? You know, no, it's true. Oh, it's scary.
You only did it for the beer.
No, I played the mean fool back in the day. And then I went to Temple University, and I was the only black person in the theater department, and I was the only black person in majoring in chemistry. So I was always the only. There's something very lonely about that. So when you have a lot of these schools that have the Latin club or the Black Student Leagues club, it's not because they're trying to be racist or what's the word? Or exclusionary. It's just, you know, it's like when you go to another country and you have traveled, right? You go to Italy or you go to Japan.